They claim that our eyes will just be created a slightly different from what they are. We talk, we see things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. You know what I'm going to ask, Allison.
Mix it up a little bit.
How is your general demeanor this evening?
Cautiously pessimistic.
So, a day ending in what?
Yeah.
Caution and pessimism is...
They're the twin flames of my life.
Well, we've got a treat tonight. We'll be talking with Rob and Eamon from Monster Fuzz.
You're quite stuck on them.
It's one of my new favorite podcasts. I really, really enjoy it. They had me on, and I had a good time with them, so I started listening, and now I'm hooked.
They're funny, which is it's some nice levity in the world of things that go bump in the night.
I quite like them, yes. I enjoy Monster Fuzz a great deal, and, you know, it's different from Strange Familiars, but I think our listeners will like it as well. We talk about Monster Fuzz, of course, a little bit, but then they share some personal stories of their own, featuring some strange and creepy stuff, including shadow people and a black dog.
Where is the origin of the black dog stories? Is it in the British Isles, UK?
I mean, that's hard to say because they're in Europe too, Scandinavia.
Everybody's got black dog stories, right?
Yeah. I mean, everywhere there are dogs, I think there are black dog stories. Mainly Scandinavia, England, Ireland, Scotland. The U.S. has plenty, Canada. And South America has pretty healthy black dog folklore as well. So, yeah, that's all over the place. I don't know the origins. I don't know who had them first, but we have them. Rob's black dog story is a little nicer than some that say. I really enjoyed it. It's a fun story. We will get to them. But first, we're going to continue High Strangeness and Hellam with Dillon. And in this segment, he talks about something that he first thought was a bat flying around him, and then he realized it was not. The way he describes it should sound pretty familiar to Strange Familiars listeners. Again, Dillon wasn't a listener to the podcast before we talked, so he wasn't taking notes on things other people had described. So his description of this is very, very interesting. Let's go ahead and get right to it.
One night I stepped on the deck. My same ritual, come out on the deck after 8:30, sit down on the in my chair. But this night, before I could even sit down in my chair, I'm just sliding the glass door closed. I'm positioning myself to sit down in the chair, and I look from the sky, and I see what looked exactly like a bat. It looked exactly like a bat, fluttering real quick, down from the sky, down towards me, and then it sputters off to whatever direction. Now, back home in D.C., my aunt's neighbors had bats that lived in their chimney. Mm-hmm. And like clockwork, every night at 7:30, they would come out. Mm-hmm. We would be out there. We would always be in the back deck eating crabs or whatever, and you could count on them at the time. So I know what a bat looks like, and this thing looked exactly like that. It looked exactly like a bat. So I was kind of happy. I was like, wow, I've been out here all this time. Like, PA has bats. That's pretty cool. I'm like, that's all right. That's pretty cool. You know, PA has bats. So I sit down, and I wait for the second pass. I figured it would come back. And it doesn't come from down from the sky. It comes from, like, my right. And it's probably maybe out about 4 or 5 feet out in front of me. It passes me. And the image of it wasn't like it was when it came from the sky, because that definitely looked exactly like a bat. But when this came past, it was kind of a little bit smaller, but out of focus and moving so fast, and I wasn't able to get my eye on it because the night had already set. You know, it's kind of dark now. Mm-hmm. I wasn't able to focus on it totally, so I just...
You have any lights out back?
I have a deck light, but I never turned it on.
Because you wanted to see the sky.
Yeah, I wanted to see the sky.
Neighbors have lights on, or just kind of ambient?
They would always have them off. Tim would have his off. Oz would never have his off.
Just kind of ambient light from the neighborhood.
The only person that would have his light on was Brian. Brian would... have his light on, and his neighbor on his side, when she was alive, she would have her light on sometimes, but not all the time. The only light that would be back there would come from the condos,
Okay.
their parking lot, and it wasn't shining straight over there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a light by the mailbox on my street, and that doesn't shine directly.
Right. So it's just kind of ambient light. You're back
Yep.
there. Yeah, nothing bright or anything.
Yep. Second pass is probably out about 4 or 5, 6 feet in front of me. Passes, and I couldn't get a good look at it, but it went by, and I just assumed it was a bat, and it was out of focus. From right to left goes, and so I'm like, okay, another 40 seconds. Then it comes from left to right, gets a little closer, it's a little bit bigger, and by this time I'm like, I don't think that's a bat. Goes to the right, from left to right. Then it comes again, another 45. It's like time periods in between these passes.
Mm-hmm.
So 45 seconds, say, maybe 50 seconds, it passes again, comes from the right again. This time, if I'd had my hand out, it went through my arm. It was that close. And when it went through, I was like, someone almost hit me. I was like, that was a football. I thought it was a football. So I was like, somebody's down in the tree line messing with me. I thought it was some kids or whatever messing with me. And somebody threw a football past my face, trying to get my attention or just bothering me. So I went to the deck and put my hand on the rail, and I'm just about to hop over down to the ground where you saw where we were standing at. I was about to hop down there and run over to the tree line, but as soon as I put my hand on the deck, I'm thinking, the deck's here. The deck's to my left. And that football should have been bouncing off somebody's deck. It should have hit the ground or something, and it was nothing. I didn't hear anything. So I was like, that ain't no football. So I backed up and sat down again. I'm looking around waiting for this next pass, and sure enough, man, right above me, it was a darkness. The best way to describe it for somebody listening would be, imagine 2 black sheets intersecting in the center, 2 black bed sheets intersecting in the middle and just wavering 12 feet above my head, the size 15 by 15 feet wide, and just wavering in the air above me. And it would waver in the air like movement, like it's fluid movement from the air, and then it would contract down into nothingness, and then the nothingness would last a second, and then it would span back out 15 by 15 feet wide, and move and flutter and fluidly in the air, and that lasts 5, 6, 7 seconds, and then it would contract back down into nothingness, and that's 1 second of nothingness, and then it would expand back out, and it kept doing this over and over above my head, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm thinking, what is this? And I'm putting together that this thing has something to do with that bat thing,
right?
And it wanted my attention. Now it has my attention. Now it's showing itself to me. So I'm like, okay, what is this? I'm sitting there in my chair, and I'm looking up at this thing.
So this is right above your head, or this is kind of at an angle?
This is, if I had a tape measure, 12 feet from my head sitting down, up 12 feet. If I'm standing up, it's only about 7 or 8 feet.
But directly above you?
Directly above me, directly in front of the bedroom window. Directly in front of the bedroom window. So I'm sitting there in the chair looking up at it, and I'm like putting thoughts, like trying to get some type of impression. What are you? What is this? What do you want? And we're talking, minutes are going by. We had 2 minutes, and I'm like, I'm sitting there observing this thing. 3 minute mark, I pulled my phone out, my neighbor Oz. This was about 11:40. I want to say 11:40. It was almost 12 o'clock. I pulled my phone out because I was going to call my neighbor, ask him to look out the window and tell me if he sees anything above my head. And I pulled the phone out, pulled his contact up, about to hit send, and I just thought, if he looks out his window, if I wake this guy up,
right,
and he looks out his window, because I asked him to look out and tell me if he see anything, and he tell me he don't see nothing, I don't want to be looked at as a nut.
Right.
So I put the phone back in my pocket, and I'm steadily looking at this thing, and we're going into 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 30 seconds, 6. Somewhere at the 5 minute mark, I was starting to get concerned for me, because I still haven't gotten any impression from this thing, but it's here.
And is it kind of moving that whole time?
It's like when it expands, as it's sitting there, it's like kind of like just fluttering in the wind. Like it's movement to it. I give you a description of two sheets intersecting, but it's not necessarily sheets. It's like fluid blackness, a fluid blackness. I'm giving you the sheets so you can put the impression in your head. If it was sheets above you, it would be moving from the wind.
Right.
But it's not sheets. It's like just like a black mass that size, and it's like it's going in different directions, like 15 feet up and 15 feet across. Okay, 15 feet up from its center, 15 feet across. And it's above me, man, and it kept doing that contraction and expanding. It kept doing that over and over. And at the 7-minute mark, I said, you know, maybe I shouldn't deal with this thing. I don't know what it is. And I got up, kept my eye on it. I got up with my eye on it. I stood up. I stood up with my eye on this thing, reached around my back, opened the door, kept my eye on this thing. I'm not taking my eye off this thing, and I step in my kitchen and close the door and go in the living room, and I'm waiting. I'm like, you know, giving it a chance to leave. I'm not a person I don't think I'm a badass or anything. Things don't really scare me that bad, but this thing I was concerned about because I didn't know what it was, and I'm not getting no impressions from it, and I don't know what it wants, and it obviously wants something because it's here. So I waited about a minute 30, and I went back out and looked. When I looked back up, it was gone, and I was like, good. I was relieved it was gone, but I never knew what it was. A story like that, I would wait to hear somebody else talk about it, and then I would say, you know what I saw? This is what I saw. But that story, I don't even care now because I have to believe somebody's seen something like that.
Well, let me tell you something, and again, you tell me if this sounds anything like
Okay.
what you think. I've had a few stories now of people describing what they described as inky shadows, they said.
Before you continue, my son wanted me to take him. This is his 17th birthday, October 23rd, his 17th birthday. This is 2018, October the 23rd, to go see Ghost Dimensions.
Okay.
Paranormal Activity. If you watch that movie, it's a thing in it that's how that resembled, and what you just said, it's how it looked. So it's like I said, I used the sheets, but it's not really sheet. It's like fluid, like a mass, like watery darkness. Watery darkness. And in that movie, when we was watching them in the theater, I said out loud, Desan, that's it. That's exactly how it looked. And this thing is in that movie and it's bothering the family. And watch that movie. If you see it, that's how it looked. That's how it looked. Take away the edges of a sheet.
Right.
But I was trying to give you the sheets for the movement, the fluid movement of it.
Right.
Because if the sheet's above you, the wind is going to make it move.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
what I was trying to give you. But it wasn't necessarily sheet. That's it. Yes. That's closer
Right.
to what I seen.
Yeah, so people have described stuff like that. You know, just it looked like
I wish I
inky
could talk to
shadows
some of
and
these
stuff.
people.
I'll see if I can dig up which witnesses it was. If I can find them,
Good.
I can put you in contact with them.
This will be the first, because like that little story, like I said, I usually just sit, I keep my mouth shut till I see a movie or something with something in it where I say, I seen something like that. But that's my first time saying, you know what, I don't even care. I never heard this, no way. This is what I saw. Now, good.
Well, like I said, when we were talking before, the stuff you're telling me, not that, look, this is what I do for a living, right? So I'm ready to hear anybody's story. But when I start hearing somebody and you're checking boxes, right? These stories you're telling me is like, okay, check, okay, that, check, I've heard that before. So I'm not saying I'm not surprised by it but it jives with what I've heard before. It checks boxes, you know what I mean? This is stuff similar to what I've heard
Are these
before.
people here?
No, these are from all over the place.
Okay.
So,
All right.
and people have talked about it in their bedroom, like withdrawing into the corner. Like they wake up and see it, and they would withdraw into the corner. But they described it like that. They said like inky shadows. And I had one person on, and then I think 2 or 3 other people said, no, I saw that too. And they came on.
Man.
So
I really would like to hear somebody. I don't even have to talk to nobody. I would like to hear somebody talk about that.
yeah, I'll send you the episodes.
All right. Because the thing about that is I usually get an impression of something, anything. I'll give you an example. Like one night when I stepped out here, I saw a orange ball of light, and the impression, I mean...
Is this the one you were talking about that was kind of over the neighborhood?
Not that one. This
okay.
is another one. And as soon as I do my routine, I step out there to sit down, and I stepped out to sit down, and as soon as I sit down and I see this thing, and for whatever reason, I said, I don't want to be dealing with this. I don't want to communicate with it. I don't want it to see me here. And I just got it. That was the first time that's ever happened. Like that, my impression was, I don't think I want to be connected to whatever this is. It didn't look friendly. It didn't look positive. It didn't look like it had any good intent for anything. And that was over the neighborhood too. But that was just the impression I got. With this thing, there was no impression. And that's what really concerned me. Like, I have no impression, whether good or bad.
Right.
You're not giving me anything. You're just here above me. That's a problem, because like now you want something, but I don't know what it is.
Right.
And I don't know if I want to be, I'm giving you anything, so I'm getting up out of here, and I left. That's why I went in the house. Nothing from it. But that thing, the orange thing that I saw, not the one I was telling you about earlier, but that one, I stepped out, saw it, and I ain't messing with this, and went in the house. It was only out there for 10 seconds. I was like, I don't think it's anything good with this thing. I'm just going in the house. That was the impression I got. Could have just been me. Could have been me just being paranoid because it was orange. But I didn't feel the need to be out there looking at it, dealing with it, even recording it. I didn't care. Went in the house. But yeah, this black thing, I don't know. I had no feelings whatsoever from anything. And just having nothing, no impression was a problem for me. But yeah, me and my son, we went to see Paranormal Activity, Ghost Dimensions. If you watch that, the thing in there is doing, like, that's it. That was it. That was the first thing when they first showed it on the screen. I pointed to the screen and said, out loud in the theater, the sign, that's it. That's exactly it. That's what I said. So when you just said the thing about inky blackness, that's better than my description with the sheets. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm just glad to hear that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that's when I talk to you. Not that I would doubt you if I didn't hear this, but when you're telling me things, I'm like, yeah, I've heard that. Yep, good. I've heard that. Yep, I've heard that.
And the only thing I can check off my head is good. Somebody else is saying something crazy like good, whether it sound crazy or not. How can 2 and 3 different people have the same type of experience?
Right.
It's got to be something to it. They got to be seeing something.
Yeah, and it happens so often. One of the cool things about doing this is getting a story when you're like, man, that's a weird one. Like, I had one, it was disembodied legs. Somebody just saw legs. And that is a weird one. And sure enough, here come other people. Okay. I've seen legs walking down the street. I saw legs walk in front of my car. I saw, it's just so weird. Just so... People are seeing this. That's all the thing I can say, because I don't think anybody's making it up. I don't think anybody's making it. There's no reason to.
All right, next we're going to be talking with Rob and Eamon from Monster Fuzz. You can find them at monsterfuzzpodcast.com or whatever podcatcher you use. Just type in Monster Fuzz and they should come up.
So I want to welcome the Fuzzy Boys to Strange Familiars.
Well, is that us, the Fuzzy Boys, then, yeah?
We've been called worse, man. We've been called much worse.
Rob and Eamon from Monster Fuzz. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having us, man.
We're continuing the Irish takeover of I think Strange Familiars is basically an Irish podcast at this point.
There's a lot of us getting on, right? How many times have you had Irish people on? Do you have a rough number?
I don't know. Lately, it's been a good bit. I mean,
really?
Yeah. So,
well, to be fair, we are known to go to different parts of the world and slowly just take over. It's in our history.
That's very true. I think Brother Richard he's been on a few times and he's very eloquent and represents us well. So yeah, it's good to have him on before us anyway,
Yeah. This is going to be a step down for your opinion of Irishmen, I'm afraid.
When did you decide to do Monster Fuzz? Why did you decide to do it? Let's talk about Monster Fuzz first, then we're going to get into some of your stories. I have to say, you've converted me. I'm a fan.
Nice.
I listen all the time now.
That's good to hear, man. That's good, because our podcast, while we talk about the same subject matter, are handled very differently, because like ours is very silly and sort of like, lowbrow a lot of the time. Like, so well, it's got,
most of the time.
Yeah, we started it was lockdown actually, and we were really bored. And I sort of popped over to Eamon's house one day and I just said to him, why don't we just start a podcast? Like, I've done YouTube in the past. Eamon has done podcasts himself in the past. And we sort of said, let's give it a go. And both of us like cryptozoology and the paranormal. It was always something that as friends we talked about. You know, when you have like a really good friend that is love one topic together and you just get really into it. That was kind of it for us. And so, yeah, that was it. That was kind of how it started, really. And we didn't really plan it much, Eamon, did we?
No. I think actually the original day we had the conversation was lockdown. The remake of Final Fantasy VII was coming out on PlayStation 4. Yeah. Rob was in the supermarkets. I figured I wouldn't be able to get it because everything was closed. It happened to be there. He brought it to my house. We had a cup of tea outside and obviously, stayed away from each other. And then, we just started talking about it. And then from there, we're like, let's just do it this Tuesday. And we just kept doing it. And we were very lucky. I had started a podcast years ago with my friend Gordo, who's doing very well with those Conspiracy Guys podcast now. And he had us on for a show. And, it wasn't like we were getting crazy listens or anything, but I guess we started getting a regular following then. So we just decided, hey, let's just keep doing this. It's fun. It's a good way to keep in contact. And we were always the two weird guys who would talk about chupacabra with each other. And all our other friends were like cool, hard men. So we were weirdos in the group.
How'd you land on the name Monster Fuzz?
It was very difficult. Well, one thing is that almost every podcast name is taken. So we tried so many combinations of things. And then I think Monster was one, and we were sort of going with 4 different textures and then Fuzz. And then we said, right, Monster Fuzz, we looked it up. It wasn't taken. And we've actually talked about this on our own podcast. And you play instruments, you probably know yourself. About 6 months later, and I'm a guitarist, I didn't even put it together. Monster Fuzz is a guitar effects pedal as well. So it's a sound as well. But in our case, it's Monster Fuzz as in fuzz, the texture, and monster as in, what we talk about really. So that was kind of the name. We wanted something simple and catchy that was just kind of, I suppose, representative, Yeah,
it was really like at one point we were the Spooky Boys, which was taken. We were trying to do everything. And then I think, Rob, it kind of came out of you because you said, I like that podcast Tiger Belly. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of because it makes no real sense. So I think we just tried to make ours make slightly more sense in the context of what we were talking about. Yeah, it's just sort of stuck. And I guess it'll try, if we ever want to do a podcast about something else, that sort of fuzz moniker is there. History fuzz, music fuzz, whatever fuzz. So we kind of went with that.
That's a good idea. I'm going to steal.
You can do familiars and stuff like that.
Dude, Strange Familiars was the title of the first Stone Breath record.
Right.
In 1995. And there were a couple bands that came out after that. And I'm not saying I'm sure they just came up with it on their own. It's not something that they couldn't have come up with on their own. But when I went to do a podcast, I was like, I want that name. I'm going to use that name. I hope there's not another podcast by that name. I looked up no. And then I was like, I wonder if I can get strangefamiliars.com. And it hadn't been taken. I was like, wow, considering there at least 3 bands that they're either like Strange in the Familiars or Strange Familiars or some combination of these names. I thought there's no way, but it was still available. So it was. Yeah,
it's tough. Monster Fuzz was actually taken, monsterfuzz.com. And I think that's just an artist. So shouts out to her. She's probably getting like Bigfoot sightings sent into her alien abductions. And she's just like, I paint pictures. I don't know anything about this.
Well, where can people find Monster Fuzz?
monsterfuzzpodcast.com, not monsterfuzz.com. And on all podcast players, just search Monster Fuzz podcast. Well, Monster Fuzz, and you'll find us.
So what's with poems? What's it, or
poems?
Poems?
You said it wrong, Tim. Yeah, it says poems. I don't know. I think I'm a big Kendrick Lamar fan, and he says poems kind of funny, but in a different way. He says like palms. And so I was like, oh, that kind of sounds funny. So I just started saying poems, and I think our listeners thought that that's how I say it, like it's an Irish thing.
I did too at first.
yeah, it's like, oh, this is how to say it, and it's like, no. And Eamon is really good at improv. That's like Eamon's strength, is just he's really good at singing on the spot, rapping on the spot, all that type of stuff. And I'm not good at improv. I'm a bit better if I craft things a little bit. So what I started to do is I started to write poems where Eamon would get into silly positions with the cryptids that we were talking about, like something silly had happened involving him. And then, of course, I pre-wrote mine. But Eamon then was able to just sing improv songs off the cuff about me being stupid rather than him, and it worked really well, I thought, you know.
God damn, yeah. Well, I mean, it was because the first one we ever recorded was Michele and Bembe, right?
Yeah.
And you were just like, I have a poem today, and I was like, what is happening here? and again, we're recording, you know, like 2-3 kilometers away from each other. So yeah, my first instinct was just sing at him until he leaves you alone. So that was that.
And there was no script. Like, there is no real, like, we don't sit down before a podcast and say, oh, this part is where we're supposed to be funny, or it's just off the cuff. And to be honest, most of the time it shows because it is amateur hour. But like, no, it's all just off the cuff. And we try and make it as absurd as possible and as silly as possible, and just have fun with it, you know.
Yeah, it is very strange because it can go from like a point where, I mean, two of us are just laughing for 2 minutes trying to get our composure back together, but then it can get really serious talking about real things, and then it goes back to being dumb, and then we're kind of being taught. So it's to be honest, it's really like the kind of conversations we would probably have in general, just exaggerated a small bit.
Yeah, that's probably it.
And with, I mean, in real life, we don't do poems and ad-lib songs to each other. That's
I don't know.
We probably should.
Yeah, to make our friendship stronger.
There's a very serious topic we need to cover before we get started with your stories, and this is chips versus fries.
So should they be called chips or fries, or what? Where are we attacking this now?
I'm just going at this at a logical thing. So you were, and I forget which one said, like, if you ask for chips and you're handed a bag of Doritos, like, it's going to be bad stuff going down. Because for the American listeners, chips over there are what we would call French fries. Yes.
Yeah.
But I just want to like logically break this down, though. So this gets deep, and this is real strange familiars territory here that I'm sure people will be happy we're covering. What do you call those things you play poker with?
They're chips.
They're chips.
I don't like where this is going.
What do you call like a thing of paint that comes off the wall, like old paint?
Well, you could say a fleck. You know, we're very wordy here at Monster Fuzz now, so we're talking about flecks, I think.
Would you not call that a chip of paint?
No, I'd never heard that in my life, man.
So, the act of making potato chips, you kind of chip them, off the potato.
Yes. French fries are still called French fries here.
Yeah, it depends where you get. Like, if you get a traditional, we call them chippers, which I suppose would be like a crisp factory over there or something. But a chipper here is just like fish and chips, sausages, all that sort of stuff. But if you go to McDonald's, it's fries. There's no chips. And the thing about chips is that you can tell that it came from like a potato. It's a more obvious, chunky sort of a, I don't know, food source.
Now, a crisp is crispy. So if we're getting onto textures, shapes, and sounds here, a crisp is definitely crispy. So if you have a bag of Lay's, if you're in America, we're very good at switching between America and stuff here with our terminologies. If you have a bag of Lay's, it's crispy. So we said crisps.
And you know, I'm going to fall down solidly with the UK on the football thing. There's no way American football should not be called football. That we should just come up with another name. So I'm with you guys on that. Like no issue there. I just like
but
the
more
chips and fries thing. I see
more
where you're
confused.
going.
Yeah, but even more confusing. This one. So Gaelic football, you use your hands as well. So much like American football. In over here in Ireland, we play Gaelic football, and they have Aussie rules in Australia, which is a very similar sport.
Yeah, there is more foot involvement in Gaelic football, to be fair, than American football.
So more like what we would call rugby, maybe.
Kinda, we still have rugby, but Gaelic football would be more fast paced. There's not really scrums or anything like that. It's more like soccer that you would know, except you can pick it up.
Okay.
I wonder, and this has just occurred to me, that the reason that we call crisps is because they come in crispy packets. When you scrunch them, it's like onomatopoeia. They make a crisp sound.
That's a revolutionary theory.
I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I'm blacking out here, man. I don't know what's going on.
Crisp works. I mean, like I'm like that. I could see that. It's
chips and potato chips are the one.
Chips is throwing me. That's the thing.
I can, to be fair, I can appreciate that for sure. Yeah, I think depending on which side of the pond you come from, there's logical arguments to be made. I will say that yours do seem slightly more logical than ours at the moment. But
ketchup, what do you guys put on your fries or your chips?
We call it tomato sauce.
Red sauce as well.
Or red sauce if you're uncouth. But I would say tomato sauce, yeah.
I'd say red sauce.
Yeah.
Not vinegar or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, salt and vinegar as well.
Salt and vinegar.
Yeah.
So there's when you get, like, in our town, if you go in and you buy a bag of chips in a chipper in town, you'll get in a Wexford accent, like, salt and vinegar with that, hon?
Yeah.
And what that means is, do you want salt and vinegar with these chips?
That's like standard issue, kind of. Like that's what if you're putting tomato sauce on, you know, you're getting a bit crazy, like you're getting a bit out there, you know. You're a bit jazzy as an individual, which I like tomato sauce.
It tastes nice. I mean, mayonnaise is, you know, that'll turn heads down the town if you put mayonnaise on your chips here.
That's if you want to be continental, you know.
Well, now that we've been all over the board, we can
it's Monster Fuzz.
Yeah, this is like a Monster
We'll take
Fuzz
everywhere.
We try to swing back and hit some of your experiences. Which did both of you have shadow people experiences?
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So both of us coincidentally have had shadow people experiences, and I had a sort of a strange black dog experience as well. These kind of things happened around the same time as well. So we did an episode on them and we sort of talked about it, and we sort of learned a bit more about what we'd had. But yeah, for me, the shadow person thing, it was pretty much, aside from the black dog thing, and maybe I had a few sort of panic attacks at certain times in my life that in hindsight seemed kind of unusual, but these were the only sort of unexplainable scenarios that I've had in my life that I could kind of go, okay, there's a little bit more to that probably than meets the eye or something. So my shadow person experience was, I lived in an apartment in an area called Cromwell's Fort, which I suppose you could say would be, if anywhere in Wexford town where we're from was to be haunted, it would be Cromwell's Fort, I think. Yeah. Because, Oliver Cromwell, if you're not familiar, he came over to Ireland and there was a sort of a genocide of the Irish people that is on his hands, I suppose you could say. And so he wasn't a popular figure here. I was living there. I was with my ex-girlfriend at the time. And the way the bedroom was laid out was you could sort of see, if the bedroom door was open, you could see into a hallway. And straight ahead was like a bathroom door. And then to the left was like a kitchen door. And so I was lying in the bed. I was awake, like it was just, I had just gotten into bed type of thing. So I wasn't tired or anything. And she had gotten up to brush her teeth and get a glass of water, I think it was. So I was just lying in the bed. I think I might have been on my phone, or maybe I was on my Kindle or something. I had looked out and I could see her sort of doing her stuff in the bathroom or whatever, like she was brushing her teeth or that. And I was like, okay. So then she left the bathroom and went into the kitchen. So I couldn't see her anymore. She was out of my vision, but the sitting room light was on at the time. So I knew she was in there or whatever. And I closed my eyes and I opened my eyes again. And I seen, I suppose, a shadow of a person, a figure in the bathroom. It was feminine. It kind of looked like her shadow, like what her shadow would be. And it was looking into the mirror. It was kind of hunched over the mirror, like, you know, if you've ever seen like a girl do her eye makeup or something like that, and she's kind of looking in close to the mirror. This shadow was doing that, and in my head, I just sort of thought, oh, okay, that's kind of weird, whatever. Close my eyes again, and then when I opened my eyes and she came back in, and I realized that she wasn't in the bathroom at the time, I sort of said, okay, that's pretty weird. And I didn't really think no more about it at the time. And I sort of, probably about a year later, I was like, yeah, that was really weird. And it was just something that stuck with me more so than anything in my life that had happened before. And for reference as well, my upbringing, if there was ever someone that was going to be around sort of supernatural or unusual occurrences, it was me. My dad practiced the occult and stuff like that. And I was surrounded by books of Aleister Crowley and things like that. And he had an altar in one of the rooms of the house. And I had never had anything like that before, ever. Not in that house or not in any house afterward. And it was only when I was in this apartment on my own with my ex-girlfriend that I had this bizarre experience. So for me, it had more weight because I was like, hang on, this is the first time I've experienced anything like that.
Did it just look like, trying to not ask leading questions, what did it look like? We'll just go with that.
There was no distinguishable features, like you couldn't make out clothing, but you could make out arms, that the shape, the silhouette. I suppose it was just a grey silhouette. It looked 2D, but it was obviously standing in a 3D area. But it's kind of hard to describe, but that's kind of how it looked to me. But it was pretty spooky.
So more colored like an actual shadow then, like a gray.
Yeah, like just like a gray color, kind of. I would say kind of semi-translucent. Yeah, that's probably what I would say.
So we get two descriptions of shadow people, that one, and then we get the blacker than black one. That's why I was trying to get to what it looked like, because we do get both. Some people say no, it just looked like a shadow, just like shadow that anybody would cast. It was separate from a person. No one was casting the shadow. But some people get into this like blacker than black description, which is super interesting.
This was grey, and there was circumstances that, or sort of, in my eyes, it probably, if it was anything, it could have been some type of ghost. And I can't really get into that for the sake of anonymity, because I wouldn't want to be giving anything away. But there was things that I found out after from her that led me to believe that it could be something else that sort of actually added more weight and depth to the story. But for the sake of anonymity, I can't really share it.
Something that was connected to her specifically.
Yeah. Something that was connected to her specifically.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting.
For sure. And that was the main one for me. Now, Eamon, you have 2 or 3 shadow people stories, right?
Yeah, I might have a blacker than black one. I don't know. I'll leave it to you to decide. But so to give you a quick idea of, this is my family home that we're talking about. We live right by the hospital. So my mother, was a nurse. But the hospital nowadays, it's a redeveloped hospital, but there was an old hospital there as well. And years ago, that hospital used to be something in Ireland we called a workhouse. And basically what it was in Ireland, there obviously the famine, people were starving. You used to be able to get bed and board if you went to one of these workhouses. So you would just work and get fed very poorly, I would imagine. But they actually separated families and children in there, where the men would be in one part of the workhouse, the women would be in another. And then the children, to be honest, I'm not sure, I'm sure the children are not in another place or are doing something else. But that was an old workhouse. Now, there's no graves dedicated to those people around here. So it's possible that all this where I live now would have just been forest way back when. So I suppose take from that what they will is
there was bodies near you, and there was bodies found. There was actually the excavated. They were making room for a new part of the hospital recently enough, about 5 years ago, and they actually found human remains. So there was it was actually in a friend of mine's back garden where they found all these human remains. Yeah, and
he sort of lives at the other side down from So I would say, as the crow flies, maybe 500 meters from him, give or take. So again, take from that what you will. I'm not going to say ghosts or anything, but it's a bit of context.
Right.
But for me, so I've got, when I was a kid, I think I would have been 8 or 9. And so these are the two I think we spoke before. And I said, when you see something, I've had loads of experience where I wake up and I see something, and I'm not against that being an experience of something supernatural. And I'm also not against that being half asleep and half awake. I can't put as much weight on those ones, but these two particular stories, I sort of know what I saw, if you like. So the first one, I must have been about 8 or 9. And I remember I was in my bedroom and I was playing my Game Boy, those old giant grey brick Game Boys.
Oh, yeah.
And I was playing a Ninja Turtles game that a friend of mine had lent me from school. Yeah, so the day was going really well until the shadow person showed up.
Banner day.
So I'm playing away on that. It's nighttime. I have my light on, which is just directly over the bed. I'm playing the Turtles game, and I'm getting beat up a lot. And at a certain point, I kind of turn the Game Boy off. Again, I'm 8 or I'm 9, and I just kind of lie back. And what I used to do a lot as a kid I just sort of, I don't know, like play with my eyes when looking at light. So if you squint your eyes, your eyelashes kind of create a stream of light from a bulb and stuff like that.
So I remember doing the same thing.
Yeah. So I used to do that a lot as a kid. So I'm looking at the light bulb and I'm just kind of noticing that if I close my eyes really hard and then I open them, I see that after image of the light as a black dot, So you kind of close your eyes really hard, open it, and you see this after image. So I'm playing around with that, and you know, there's nothing. I don't feel spooky. I don't feel any way. I don't feel anything. I'm whatever. And I look to my right, and right beside my bed is a full figure made of these black dots. And I suppose you could say they're kind of blacker than black, because when you do squint your eyes like that and then open them, that after image of the light is always really, really dark.
Yeah.
So there's a figure standing there. I remember jumping through it and running into my parents, who would have been in the sitting room. So it's just like, you know, just down the hall. And I still don't understand this next bit, or why I don't really understand. I opened the door and I didn't tell them what happened. I don't know what it was. I didn't go, there's a thing in my, nothing like that. I just kind of ran in, opened the door, and then just kind of sat down until it was like time to go asleep, you know. And I can't even remember if I was scared later that night or anything. Like that memory is just gone. I remember that. And like I said, it was made completely of these after images of the light. So it was a strange experience. And look, like I said, you could say that's the active imagination of a child. He's been playing Ninja Turtles all day. His brain is like wet cake. You know, maybe that's the case. But the second story I have, this one...
Whoa, hold it.
Oh, sorry.
You jumped through it.
I jumped through it, yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel anything, or?
No, nothing. I think... And again, like, it's so many years ago. I'm talking like, you know, 20-something years ago. So I don't have that memory fresh in my head. And actually, interestingly enough, I had completely forgotten this until we started doing the shadow people story. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, Jesus, I remember when that actually happened. So I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel any foreboding sort of sense of anything beforehand. When I jumped through it, I didn't feel any electricity. I didn't feel anything. I was just, you know, like I was full of adrenaline because that scared me. But I don't fully remember how long it took me to see the thing, to jump through the thing, to run down the hall. Like, I guess it's happened so long ago that I don't really have a lot of that. But I just remember this thing made up of those after images of a light when you've kind of blinked really hard, you know?
I'm just trying to like put myself into 8-year-old Eamon's head.
Yeah, it's not a good place to be.
I think 8-year-old Tim would have gone around it.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting choice. But I guess if you're afraid and you're just trying to get the hell out, you know.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing. Like, and again, the memory's so old, I kind of don't fully remember. But I remember fear, and it was like I must have known on some that I'm like, this isn't a thing that's gonna stop me.
Right.
But again, there's no thought, there's no like considering if I'm gonna hit off something. And I think one of the things I remember being much, much younger and playing on the stairs one day. And I remember looking at the top of the stairs, and I was like, and it was just my imagination going, I wonder what it'd be like if there was just a big green face there. And I sort of tried to imagine it into being. So, you know, when you're obviously you're not seeing something, but you're imagining what a thing might look like in a certain place. So the reason I'm bringing that up is that I knew the difference between what was my imagination, what I was projecting, and a thing that was there. Mm-hmm. You know, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. I don't have very good memories of this. I don't even fully remember how it looked. If it was looking down on me, I would say it looked more sort of 2D, but again, cloudy because it's made up of these after images.
Yeah. I'm building this whole thing in my head that, you know, had you not been messing with that and doing that with your eyes and getting those after images, you might not have seen it. Like,
that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
Somehow it allowed you to see it somehow. I don't know.
I mean, it could be. What's again sort of interesting, because I only have one other one that I won't rush into, but there is an element of light play with the other story as well. So I don't, and it happened in the same room, just, you know, 10 years later.
We at Monster Fuzz, our strange familiars, don't condone staring into light bulbs all night trying to see shadow people.
I call it the Eamon O'Neill moth method. It's the only way to see bona fide shadow people.
Light bulbs scrying.
Yeah.
But if I can segue it into the other story, if you'd like.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other one I have a much better recollection of. It happens about 10 years later. I'm pretty sure I'm 18. And this time when I was 7 or 8 or whatever, I had like just a single bed in the middle of the room. Well, it's kind of coming out of the middle of the room with the headrest at the wall. When I'm 18, for some reason, don't ask me why, but for my 11th birthday, I demanded that I get bunk beds, even though I don't have a brother or anything to share them with. I thought it would be cool to make forts and stuff.
It was for the shadow person.
It was for whenever he got sleepy. So I'm 18 years old and I still have bunk beds for no reason. I think I've either just started college or I'm just finishing my leaving cert. It's somewhere in around that time frame. So I'm 18, 19. And so right opposite where my bunk beds were, they're a kind of parallel to the wall now. So they're right in at the wall. And right across from them, I have a closet where I just have my clothes in. But I always have the doors of the closet open and I hang towels at either end, shower or whatever. And inside the closet, I have one of those old school, like 3 CD sort of LCD light hi-fis. Mm-hmm. So it does that little thing with the bar of light where it'll be like CD1, CD2, jazz, bass, and it says all this stuff in little LCD patterns. And so there's always this little green hue that's coming off it. Because I used to keep it plugged in all the time, and I used to listen to like music going to sleep a lot. So I'm lying in bed, I'm not asleep, I'm just kind of looking at the light a little bit again. And this time what happens is, so my curtains are drawn, and most times you draw the curtains, you have that tiny little V at the top where they meet, where a small little piece of moonlight might get through. Mm-hmm. And so one of these towels that I have hung on the end of one of the open doors, I see it kind of twitch or something. I see something happens with that towel. I assume, I'm like, oh, maybe the moonlight must have hit that in a certain way. And I kind of cock my head a little bit to see what way it's hit the towel, what has happened, if you like. And again, there's no sense of foreboding, there's no fear. But basically, that part of the towel, so it's really dark past that towel. I can't make out the towel. And something that's about 6 feet tall, and again, this isn't the same as the last thing I saw with the light kind of blotchy, dark black. This is a shadow that just walks out from the left and walks kind of, it looks as if the head's cocked to look at me, but it's hard to know. And again, this happens so fast, you're talking in a couple of seconds. It walks out and it gets to the center of the CD player, which is probably only 2 steps, 3 at a push from where it's come from. And it just sort of disappears from the ground up when it gets to kind of say where that LCD light is at its brightest point. And I still remember, like, I didn't have any fear, not like when I was a kid and the adrenaline kicked in. This was just me sort of lying in bed and I was like, what has just happened? Like, what is going on? And I just sort of jumped out of bed. I had like a lamp that was at the other side of the room. I just turned it on. I was scared, man, but I just didn't know what had happened,
Did it, you say it disappeared from the ground up, so just almost like faded out? Or
yeah, exactly, faded out. There's actually, me and Rob have talked about this before, there's a really old website called JK Cinema, and they used to do this like video thing on urban legends and ghosts and stuff like that. And this is like way back 2002, 2003. There's one, and it's called Ghost in the Car Park, and I didn't see it until sometime later, but it shows this shadowy figure sort of disappear by a car. And when I saw that video, I remember going, that's the thing I saw. That's the thing. That's exactly the thing. And then I started getting in my own head, and I was kind of like, as time went on, because you forget about these things, but I started going, wait, did I see that video first and then I thought that I had seen? Do you know what I mean? You're trying to kind of know.
No, yeah. I've done the same thing with, when I talked to you guys, I talked about the alien abduction stuff, right?
You did,
yeah. And the thing where, like, I know they're in alien abduction literature somewhere, someone says you don't have the right to do this, and they reply in mind speak, we do have the right, or something like that. But I had a very similar thing, and I don't remember how I protested. I don't remember if I said you don't have the right, like, in my head, I mean, I know I was very upset, You know, I know I had the thing, but it's also been colored by reading that other experience.
Yeah, yeah. And because like this happens on a certain day, I mean, one of the more, I wouldn't say scary parts about it, but you know, I'm pretty young, like I'm 17, 18, 19, something like that. But I was with a girl and she was my first girlfriend. You know, it's that like first love, and you're like, we're gonna be together forever, and wow, I can't believe it's everything is Dawson's Creek. But
always works out.
Yeah, always works out. But she was quite Christian, and she, like, when I told her about it, and this did not help at all, talking about trauma, she told me that this was like a demon trying to get me, and I had to recite this prayer. And I remember like I must have been a few days later on my phone to her repeating these lines to try to just get this shadow person that was trying to possess me away. And that really freaked me out. Like, the shadow person was one thing, but that idea, because I didn't have an idea, I was like, oh, it must be a ghost, or maybe fell asleep and didn't realize it. But that really freaked me out to a point where I remember walking home one day and I was coming up the street, and it's just, funnily enough, it's just by that workhouse I was talking about, that old hospital. And I'm coming up the street to there's some street lights, but it's pretty dimly lit. And I just start getting this terrible fear. And I think it's after saying this prayer and everything that, like, I'm just going to disappear into the street. I'm just going to, like, go down into the concrete or go down into the tarmac, and I'm just going to disappear, and it's going to get me. And I'm sure this was just a conjuring of my own imagination, because it would have happened recently. But the fear, it wasn't the shadow person. That was a scary experience. It was the idea that she put in my head. And I'm not saying rightly or wrongly, and I'm certainly not casting judgment. We were, like, she was a year or two younger than me, so she's a kid too, you know? Mm-hmm. But it was that idea that there was something trying to get me that really, really just, it terrified me, you know, that I wouldn't be in control, or I might do something to hurt someone if this thing got me. And it really, really freaked me out, man, for a long time.
One of the messages, I think, the general drum beats of Strange Familiars has to do with kind of what you're talking about there, and that's like, nobody knows what these things are. Yeah. And I think it's important to drive that home, because what you're saying there are people who assert themselves, and often not out of any, they're not trying to be devious in any way or anything. They think they know what it is. They truly believe it. Like, she probably truly believed it was demonic in nature.
Yeah, 100%. And as well, like, I mean, we still would chat if we see each other now, you know, we get on well. But since, I mean, like I said, we were both kids back then, but now I don't believe she's religious or anything like that. I could be wrong about that, but certainly that was just an idea that was in her head, same as I would probably have ideas about Catholicism, right, maybe around that age, because that's the way I was raised. And then you get a bit older and you kind of reevaluate. Not that there's anything wrong with those ideas, just it's not, as you say, it's not the whole truth. It's not the gospel, to say, I suppose.
So when we're dealing with these unknowns, I think if someone asserts themselves often, says, well, no, that was this, and you don't know what it is. Yeah. You know, I think it's very possible that you just go, oh, they must know what it is. I mean, it's logical even, you know?
Yeah.
So you kind of default to what they say. So yeah, like I said, that's kind of one of the drum beats we try to hit here again. Like, nobody knows what these things are. And if they do, they need to provide receipts, because I'd like to see them. But
I think you're totally right.
It happens, you know. It happened to me too, in a whole other situation where, you know, someone basically told me I was being possessed by the spirit of this young man they were trying to contact. They were doing spirit contact and stuff, and I was literally overcome with emotion. Not really like me. I'm not usually one to just cry at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
And really overcome with them. And they're like, oh, you know, you're connecting with the spirit and this and that. And now, you know, given the benefit of time, I look back and go, well, was I, you know, or was there other things happening there?
That's it. Yeah. No, I think you're totally, and I know I probably something similar. We did a ghost haunt walkthrough. It was the same thing. I was guessing these things correctly. Like, how did he die? And I was like, did he do this? And they're like, oh my God, how do you know all this? And I was like, I don't know. But I think it was just my brain was going, well, we're in a place, so it's obviously something tragic. Do you know what I mean? And you're kind of doing the maths in your head almost, but people are telling you you're channeling. And like your experience, I felt totally drained afterwards. But I think it was because my everything you know or you think you know about life, people are telling you, oh no, look, you're doing this thing. And then emotionally, that's quite draining. You know, that total gray area.
And I mean, I'm open to there being something, paranormal having happened as well, but it's just not exactly like defined as cleanly as they were saying,
The shadow, for me, I didn't actually feel any sort of sense of anything. As a matter of fact, in hindsight, when I learned more information, I suppose I kind of actually felt a little bit comforted, but it never actually put any fear in me. I think when I seen it at the time, I was like, this was weird, is what I really thought. And also I should note as well, because sometimes, and we've talked about sleep paralysis. We talked about it when you came on our podcast, Tim. I've never had sleep paralysis, and I never felt paralyzed at that time. I felt fine and sort of, and also I think to sort of, I suppose, lend weight to the credibility of the story, I'm not a napper. I'm not someone who drops off. I'm kind of like a robot. I have to like program myself to fall asleep. I have to lie down and say, right, I'm going to sleep now. I never doze. Even if I've had 4 hours sleep, I don't doze. It's just something I don't do. So when I closed my eyes, it was more just resting them. I was just like, just waiting for the ex-girlfriend to come back. So if that's what kind of even made it, I suppose, more unusual for me, was that, it was never a thing where I could say to myself, because I'm looking for answers to sort of smash the whole idea of it in my head. But I could never really bring something. I don't know why I look for that. I suppose maybe because it is so unusual to see something like that. But there was nothing that I could come up with to actually explain it away and say, oh, that's what that was. As a matter of fact, the more I looked into it, the more sort of supernatural explanations could actually answer it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. It's funny. You see, like those two shadow people experiences are probably they're the two that I put most weight behind for me. But I mean, I won't get into it today because we'd be here forever, but there's a whole load of stuff about living in a haunted house with Rob's cousin and a lot of stuff that happened there, and then a lot of stuff that happened back in that room. But it's more that what do they call it, the hypnagogic state, when you're half asleep and half awake.
Oh no, so, but I gotta get into that now, but we will come back. I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm. There's theories about that being like that you're actually communicating on a different plane when you're sort of in that state,
Yeah, and we even talked about, I think we might have talked about it before we were on air, but we were talking about those filters in the brain, like being half asleep, does that filter the brain a bit? So there's other elements of kind of, let's call it universal consciousness for the crack, that can kind of manifest itself or show itself to you. Just because in the same way that when you're drunk, maybe it's hard to feel fear, you've just filtered a part of your brain. So maybe when you're in that half asleep, half awake moment, can you filter things out so that you're connected slightly to another plane?
Yeah. Well, and it's really hard to talk about this stuff because the danger is people who have genuinely experienced things in a waking state, you don't want them to say, oh, it's all a dream, right? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I do think dreams play some part in all of this, and I'm working on some shows and possibly even a book that tackles that, because it seems to be so tied into the experience. And I mean, this gets in the whole Jungian, like, imaginary versus imaginary.
I was literally just about to say, have you read much Carl Jung?
Yeah, we're actually recording an episode on dreams right after this.
Oh, really?
So it's quite strange that we're talking about it. But yeah, all the notes that we done were all about that kind of thing, the dream state. But the way that we look at that, you were sort of saying about, well, you don't want to take away from their experience, because by saying it. But there's a lot we don't know about the dream state. So, I mean, even offering an explanation of, well, maybe it was dreams doesn't necessarily dismiss it being something supernatural or out there, or because there's a lot that isn't explained about dreaming still to this day. I mean, even if you look for there isn't hard scientific fact about dreams. It just doesn't exist. There's different theories as to what they might be, and some are very, very, very good and interesting, but there isn't concrete stuff to say, right, this is it, we've got it wrapped up, let's move on to the next thing,
Well, for sure, my experience that we had in that place called Pandemonium, I was awake. I was woken up by wooden knocks. What followed, I was entirely awake for.
Right.
But I've since come to view that experience, like both Chad and I, we're camping, and we both woke up from similar dreams. We were both dreaming in place. In other words, I was having a dream that I was in the campsite there, and so was he. We were both dreaming about creatures, different creatures, but similar. And we wake up to these wood knocks and have this pretty intense experience. I'm now convinced that if we didn't sleep there, that wouldn't have happened. Now, I don't know the mechanics involved in all that, but those dreams feel so integral to that experience that I'm fully convinced. And part of it's because we've been back a few times and we haven't slept there, and the feeling is very different. So I have to repeat the experiment. I'm going back in October and sleeping there, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And even as we again, maybe it was pre-recording, but we talked about things that can be both, let's say, supernatural and also, like, I do think there's an element of dreams that is your brain sort of defragmenting itself and sort of, right, I don't need this, I do need this, I do need that. But then I was doing a lot of work sort of recently, just, I suppose it's like self-psychotherapy. You're kind of sitting down, working through memories and kind of doing some of that like Jungian introspective work, Yeah. But my dreams they were loaded with like metaphor, and they were very vivid, which is, I usually don't really remember my dreams well, but I remembered my dreams very, very well after this. And there was a lot of stuff about light and darkness in those dreams. Like, for example, one was an orca that I was trying to get towards, but I couldn't seem to get towards it. Another one was me trying to hide from a being that was fully made of light. And the more I was thinking about it, I was like, all right, well, you're trying to get deep with something here. You're trying to understand what makes you a bit better here. And the more I thought about the orc, I was like, well, that's light and darkness. You're trying to understand your own light and darkness, your shadow, if you like. And then the other one, the being of light illuminating someone who's hiding, is it trying, like that shadow work.
Yeah.
So, but it's really, and again, look, it could be 1,000 other things, and I'm sure different psychoanalyst or whatever would just be like, oh no, this, he's got that Freudian thing where he wants to sleep with his mother. It's like, who knows? But it's just, for me, I noticed when I started to do that work, my dreams started to get much more vivid and loaded with symbolism. Big dreams, little dreams. I think there's something to that. I think sometimes, you go to sleep at night and you're just got to unload whatever, for the day. And then sometimes you get, for whatever reason, you get these big dreams that are at least personally meaningful, if nothing. Yeah, absolutely. So who had the black dog?
That was me. So this all occurred, like I said, within the space of about 3 to 4 months. And at the time, I never thought much about it, but because nothing has really happened since or before, I was kind of like, okay, there was something to this. So this was a fairly bizarre, and I wasn't even really aware of the whole black dog folkloric thing at the time. Even I knew it was a cool Led Zeppelin song, but I never really gotten too far into it. But yeah, so it was Christmas Day, and as good Irish Catholics, we were getting drunk. I met with my friends, and we just,
is a fantastic time for the supernatural, though. People like, especially in America, I don't know, maybe over there you have some of that old folklore still attached to it, but here it's been it's so saccharine, Christmas, it's very, very saccharine, that people don't realize, like, there's this strong tradition of I mean, like, the Christmas ghost story didn't start with Christmas Carol, it's going back hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's really, really, in Where the Footprints End, I call it Time of the Wild Men, because there's just so much there. There's so much, so Christmas is that's a good time. That's a good time for this stuff.
Yeah, and we, like, even in Ireland still, it's not uncommon for, say, people that maybe don't frequent Mass to go to Christmas Mass and stuff like that. So there is still a vibe of tradition in Ireland. It is, like you said, I think we are very influenced by America, whether we like to admit it or not. At times, Irish people are very proud of their culture, but I do think by proxy, we have these huge influences on either side of the water to us. We have Great Britain, we have America, and I think we take little bits of both of their cultures. It probably wouldn't be a popular thing to say, but that's how I feel on it. But I think that every Christmas it sort of does get a bit diluted and further away from what it should be in some people's eyes. But yeah, so Christmas Day, I had wrapped up with the family. We had our meal and all that stuff. I was up in my parents' house for it. And me and my friends decided, let's go down to my apartment. This was the apartment I seen the shadow person in and all that. Said, let's go down and have some drinks and just have a bit of a get together for the night. And so we walked down. There was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 of us. And they were all witnesses to this. Like, so they were all there with me. And there's pictures of me with this dog on Facebook as well. It's just such a bizarre experience. So we're walking and we're probably like, you know, 3/4 of a kilometer from my apartment at this stage, and this black dog appears, and it's a black lab, and it's got whiskers and stuff. It's got grey whiskers, and it's really friendly. Like, it's like, you know, I mean, labs and golden retrievers are friendly. I have a golden retriever myself, but this is unusually friendly. It comes up to the whole group, and it's like, hey guys, you know, what's up? How are you all doing? And we're like, okay, cool. Look, it's a dog. Like, whatever. And there was no owners in sight, and no houses that it seemed to belong to. So we said, right, we'll just keep walking. Let's ignore it. So we kept walking, and the dog kept following us. And as a matter of fact, it started to lead. But the unusual part was that it was leading us to where we were going. So this is where it started to get strange. So we're all kind of laughing at the novelty still. We're like, oh, look, the dog knows where we're going, you know. We're like 6 drunk Irish idiots, like, having to laugh at this. And it continues to walk to my apartment, and my apartment even has a kind of an unusual entrance in that it kind of wraps up around. It's a little walkway that you have to walk around to get up to the front door. And so the dog walks up ahead of us, like we haven't even made the turn in to do this little walk up to the door, and the dog walks right up to the door, sits down at the door, and waits for us. And so we're all laughing. I'm saying to my friends, look at this. This is nuts. Like, I've never seen a dog do this, you know? And so I opened the front door, and again, very bizarre behavior. The dog runs in the house ahead of me and jumps up in my chair. So I had a chair in the middle of the room. The dog jumps up, sits in the chair, and it's as happy as Larry. It's delighted, and it's just sitting there. So we're like, what do we do with this dog? And I started taking pictures and stuff with the dog. It's actually pretty spooky, because in the picture, I'll send it to you after we record, the dog actually has like bright blue eyes. It's obviously just a camera thing, but it adds a bit of spookiness to it. So the dog stays there all night with us and literally sleeps at my feet. We're all drinking, having a laugh, and being loud and sort of boisterous, and the dog doesn't care. This is a room full of strangers. It's like, well, whatever. So then at the end of the night, I'm like, to be honest, I would have kept the thing. But at the time, I didn't have a garden in this apartment. So I was like, okay, I have to put it out. Like, I don't know when this dog is going to want to go to the toilet or anything like that. So I'm going to have to put it out. Like, so I put it out, and we don't think no more of the dog. We sort of say, oh, that was fun. Like, but didn't really think much about it again. And New Year's. So New Year's, we're all partying in the house. And next thing, there's this scratching on the front door. And we're like, what is this? And we open the door, and it's the dog. Oh my and he wow. And he comes in, and he hangs out with us for the night. And I'm like, this dog has to go, because like at the time, I didn't even have the means to mind the dog at the time. I think I was like 20. I didn't have much money or anything. I was a broke 20-year-old. But that was it. The dog went again after that experience. Never seen it again. It was unusual. In hindsight, I mean, do I believe in things like reincarnation? I don't know. There was a death in the family maybe a few weeks beforehand, maybe a month or two beforehand. That's the only thing. Like, obviously, myself and Eamon, you know, we will look to that type of thing to try and explain stuff. But it was definitely comforting, and it was a really nice dog. It was super chill. Wow. It was a really strange experience, but yeah, it was a black lab as well. So once the Moddy do, have you heard of the Moddy?
Or the morning after Christmas, you put it out.
It was gone.
It just goes. It
goes
wherever it goes, and shows up again on New Year's. Yeah, it shows up on New Year's.
Amazing. Now, if this dog lived like where we met it, that was at least 3/4 of a kilometer to a kilometer away. So it was far enough away to where, you know, there's no significance in my house to this dog, right, if you get me. Like, you would get it if it showed up at a neighbor's house or something. But I've owned plenty of dogs throughout my life. I've never seen that behavior. Like, obviously labs can be friendly and stuff for sure, But to lead the way, to get up to my front door, to then barge in when I open the front door and sit up on my seat and be like, yeah, this is my house. And,
Do they have leash laws there?
like, can you to keep the dog on the leash?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. And as well, I mean, the circumstances. This was
so. When I on the farm, it was not uncommon. Like, just dogs would wander around, and sometimes you'd just see a dog, and you knew what dogs were kind of like the neighborhood dogs. They'd come through. But in a town, and I'm presuming this is in a town or.
Yeah, town. Yeah, built up enough town, 20,000 population, something like that. Yeah, busy enough, little small town.
It's much rare to have just like the roaming dog. That's like, oh, that's Bill's dog or whatever.
It never I very rarely see a dog off leash. Much less, of course, on like say Christmas Day when all the family are at home, right, and they would know that their dog is missing. They saw. It did have a collar, I believe, but I had never seen this dog before or after that. Like, I'd never seen it. I used to walk this route every day. So, sometimes 2-3 times a day. Never seen that dog before. It wasn't a dog that I was familiar with. And as a dog lover, I do pay attention. If I see a nice dog, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a cute dog. Right. And if I was approached by a dog, I'd totally entertain it. So, sure. It was a fairly bizarre experience for me.
That's fantastic. No, I love that story. We get these stories on Strange Familiars occasionally of these seemingly normal or non-paranormal humans that appear in particularly weird situations. The Bunnyman stories are ones that come up. The people outside of Easter dressed as rabbits or in bunny suits or with bunny ears, and that just appear in strange situations. And so strange where people are like, that wasn't right, beyond the bunny suit. That wasn't right,
Is that like Donnie Darko, kind of? Did that get that idea from that theory, maybe? Because have you seen Donnie Darko?
I have, sure. Yeah,
it's that kind of bunny suit idea in that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and it kind of pops up, here and there. And there's a chicken and egg thing, but I do think these stories... Well, I know there's a Bunny Man story that absolutely predates it, that I think influenced Donnie Darko. It was a story about it was outside of Washington D.C. in Virginia, and this guy in this bunny suit would just show up. People would be like parked in this area. He'd just show up. He had an axe, and he'd tell people they had to leave. It was his property, even though it wasn't, and so forth. But many people saw him and became this huge legend. There's a bridge there they call Bunny Man Bridge.
Yeah, I was just about to say Bunny Man Bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, but that certainly predates Donnie Darko. But these stories, like one of the guys who's on the podcast a lot, my buddy John, right near my house, he was driving and he said, not Easter. This is well past Easter into the summer. He's driving by. There's a guy sitting in a cornfield in a chair in the middle of the field in a bunny suit, waving at his car when he passes by. He saw it. His kids saw it.
That's spooky, man.
Yeah, he's telling me the story, and I said he was illuminated because it was at night. He was illuminated, and I said, "Well, how was he illuminated?" And that's the thing that he's like, I don't remember." He's he said there wasn't a street light because he's in the middle of a field. He said, "I don't remember how he's illuminated." So that's the weird thing. But it was just odd. He said he and his kids still talk about this guy in the bunny suit waving at them when they drove by.
Yeah, I mean, it is so spooky, but
I wonder if you didn't have the canine version of that. You know what I mean? The odd, relatively normal thing popping up in abnormal situations or something like that.
Yeah, and as well when you tie in the folkloric side of the black dog and its symbology and the Maddie Doo is a famous black dog in Manx culture in the Isle of Man. We have listeners from the Isle of Man, and they're obviously very proud of their island, and they wanted us to do a Maddie Doo episode. And so when we did that, we learned a lot more about black dogs, and most of the time, it seems like that they're evil or something that is said to incite fear. But for me, I like this dog was great. I would have kept him as a pet. He was cool.
Our semi-local, it's a South Mountain. It's not terribly far from here. Black dog is the Snarly Yow.
Okay, right.
That's a good name, Snarly Yow.
Snarly Yow was good, yeah.
Those not super well known, but the black dog legends, they did cross the Atlantic, I think, with the Europeans when they came. They brought the black dogs with them.
Yeah, there's the Black Shuck is another one, I think, from somewhere in England there. There's just quite a lot of them.
Yeah, my son, he must have seen some show when he was little, like real little, on Black Shook. So for many years, he would often mention like, "Oh, Black Shook."
Yeah. Just the Hound of the Baskervilles as well, of course, has the sort of the black hounds and all that, doesn't it?
So no red glowing eyes with this
blue glowing eyes.
This black
in the picture with me and the dog. Like I said, I'll send it to you after we record. The dog has bright blue glowing eyes, which is kind of, obviously it's probably an artifact. It didn't have it in person, but it's kind of adds to the whole vibe of the encounter. But yeah, all my friends were there, and it was one of those things where at the time we didn't think it was as strange. And then when I was retelling the story to them, I'm like, do you not think that this was bizarre? Right. And they're like, yeah, now I do think it was bizarre. Because I'm like, if you pull a dog far enough away from its home as well, like it probably will want to go home at some point. This dog didn't care. It was like, actually, I want to go back there.
Did he spend the whole night, the New Year's as well?
Yeah. He was there the whole night at New Year's. In fact, there was too many people in the house at New Year's, so I had to pull him out because I didn't want people like stepping on him or anything if he was asleep on the floor, because it was a pretty big house party. So it was funny. He was outside, but he kept scratching on the door to come back in. And I was like, man, you've got to go home. Like I don't know where you're going. And I imagine he did find his home because he was gone then the next day. But like, yeah, it was such a bizarre scenario. And
were you sharing spirits with this animal?
No, he might have had a few cigarettes or something like that, maybe a few jazz cigarettes or something like that.
Party dog. He's
party pooch.
No, that's super cool. I love that story.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I'd have had a hard time not keeping him. I tell you that.
I know, yeah, for sure. To be honest, if I was older now, even though I have a dog, I would absolutely have probably kept him in overnight and then probably made a post on, say, the local Facebook groups and tried to establish if there's an owner. And if not, I would have killed him. Now, kept him. Sorry, not killed him.
Wow.
That's a Freudian slip there. We're not even Freud. No, but I would have kept him, and I think, because what I was thinking of is the vets nearby would have probably killed him if he was a stray, but I don't know whether they do that with dogs.
But actually, yeah, isn't there that animal shelter place?
Yeah, they euthanized cats. Yeah, you see, the reason that I said it was because they put a letter through my door when I was up there, and it was like, if you don't take your cats indoors, we will euthanize them. They used to scoop up the feral cats, which I suppose kind of has to be done as well. But I don't think they'd do that with dogs, hopefully. And as well, this Labrador was quite old. Like, it had grey whiskers.
Right.
So I if it wasn't some type of spectral pooch, it had owners, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Whether it's supernatural or it's just a normal thing, maybe it just came into your life at the right time and it's a nice sort of thing to have happened, you know?
Well, the Black Dog story, whether it's supernatural or not, it's an awesome story. Shows up again on New Year's. I mean, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
It's like 7 days later, these guys are going to have a great session again. So let me show up.
Yeah. Or he heard you partying. He's like,
yeah. I wonder where he was like the other days, like Valentine's Day. Does he go to a different house, or he just like moves around?
Shows up with a rolls in his mouth. Yeah.
Oh wow. That that guy's girlfriend would be really happy. She's like, how did you even do this?
I planned it all.
Yeah.
So you guys do 2 episodes a week, which makes me insane.
Yeah,
that's awesome, and I wish I could, and I can't. But I'm impressed. 2 episodes a week of Monster Fuzz.
I'm a freak for like utilizing the time that I have as much as I can. So psychologically, the way I work is like, me and Eamon are sitting down. We're probably going to be talking for an hour or 2 beforehand and after anyway. So we may as well make the most of the time and get as much recording done as we can. And it sort of also came from, as the podcast grew, we had these great fans, like our listeners, and you know, you hear it all the time. It's like, oh, we had the best, but our listeners are very active and they're a really cool bunch, and we do really appreciate them. And those guys, you know, they were interacting with us so much that I kind of felt like, I said it to them and I was like, maybe we should do something that's a bit more community driven as well, you know, something that we can sort of reach out to people a little bit. And because basically Strange Familiars, you reach out to people and you get their stories, you know, so that's kind of a lot of what you do. We didn't have that component. So we were talking about people and talking about stories, but it was all just stuff you'd find from Google. So we said, let's just have something where people can write in, people can call in, people can, do whatever they like, and have a more light sort of, just have a chat, and sort of, it's an easygoing podcast. And so that's what Mini Fuzz became.
Yeah.
And as well, we don't really edit that much, to be honest with you either, because we kind of keep it fairly raw, just do the basics and keep it kind of unedited. We never edit anything out unless it's like something really ridiculous. But most of the time, everything stays in. And it's also, we found sometimes that when we started a mainline episode, which is the ones that come out on a Monday, with the ones that have a theme, I suppose you could say, that sometimes we were a bit cold, for lack of a better term, going into them. Like we'd be fumbling over words, or and you probably got that yourself as a podcaster. You know what it's like. Sometimes you go into something and you're, oh, did I say the right thing there? Or maybe I'm saying. So we kind of felt that Mini Fuzz was a great way to get warm. So we spend usually 40 minutes to an hour recording that. And then we go into a main episode that'll take about an hour and a half. But we found that the quality improved, right, Emma?
Yeah, for sure. And I think Mini Fuzz as well, because it's just like, here's some strange articles that happened, or here's a story someone wrote in, or in certain cases, here's a song someone sent in, or like, and again, Rob's point with the community, people sending in poems and songs, and it's really fun to have that aspect of it. But the Mini Fuzz is really just the kind of, gets us in the mood. And then sometimes the Mini Fuzz can be a catalyst for like a
pure
really
silliness.
Bizarre, exactly. It might set off the tone of the next episode. Like I don't know whether to be proud or ashamed of it, but our Skinwalker Ranch episode is it's ridiculous. There's like, if you go there and you really want to know about Skinwalker Ranch, I would advise against it, because it's just us laughing about nonsense. And it's really, because I love the whole idea of Skinwalker Ranch, and if I turned on this episode, I'd be like, I will never listen to these people again.
It's just, so it worked out in our favor to just do it that way, but it was about trying to maximize our use of time. So let's say, for example, if we sit down at 8:00 at night, we'll generally have 2 episodes done and the episodes edited by 12:30 that night, the next morning, I suppose you could say. So it doesn't take me very long to churn out what we churn out.
I'm way too anal. I edit everything.
Yeah, well, no, you're right. Like, I think, you see, it depends on what angle you're coming from, who your influences are as a podcast, I think, as well. Like myself and Eamon, because we're such good friends, we have a good rapport with each other, and we're used to talking to each other so much.
That helps.
Yeah.
I have noticed when we do like the history episodes where it's just Allison and I, my wife and I, batting back and forth, so much easier to edit, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just we're more relaxed with each other.
And it's hard to get that in a podcast otherwise, which is why if you're ever, I think to anyone that wanted to start a podcast and they were doing a sort of a co-host situation, always look fairly close to you. Look to people that people that you kind of get the vibe for each other. And it probably helps a little bit too that I did 500 hours of YouTube videos, Eamon did hours and hours and hours of podcasts, so maybe we do have a little bit of self-editing at times where we can just move on quickly rather than leaving things hang, and little things like that. But it's like Joe Rogan, he's the biggest podcast in the world. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Joe anymore, but like, they don't really edit Joe, like, it's not edited as such, it's just a conversation.
I think that's it, man. It's all like it's certainly for me, if I was trying to do something more in the tone of what you're doing, Tim, I would be more meticulous about the way that I'd edit it. Because I mean, with him and me, it's like, you come for the cryptid, you stay for the comedy. Because sometimes you go to find out about a monster or whatever it is, and it's me and him talking absolute brown to each other.
I think that's why I like it. I get enough of the straight cryptid stuff.
Well, it's there's room for everything, and that's the great thing about it. And I think with your style of podcast as well, it having it more edited and sticking to a strict form works better, because it's, you're coming because you want to hear stories, you want to hear information. And I think if you're presenting that in the most clear and concise way you can, that's only going to pay dividends. Like, for people that are listening, they're like, oh, this is great, I'm getting what I want to get. A lot of people don't like banter based podcasts, so it is horses for courses. It's up to different people and what they like.
Have you ever run into the UK Bigfoot people?
No.
Would you believe that there's actually Irish Bigfoot people as well?
Oh yeah.
They're based out of Wicklow.
Yeah.
So potentially there's a Bigfoot roaming around Glendalough, which is a popular tourist attraction.
Beautiful place. And if Bigfoot was anywhere in Ireland, he would be
there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, here's one thing though. And I never thought about this before.
Oh.
So the Wicklow Mountains is a known sort of
spook spot.
A site where people have disappeared, right? Mm-hmm. And now this has been linked back to, there's some various sort of criminals in Irish legal history, would have been
affiliated with the cases in the area.
Yeah, predators of women and stuff like that. But there's a lot of unsolved cases of people disappearing in the Wicklow Mountains, which would be close to, I suppose, if you're a Wicklow Bigfoot group. I mean, who knows, you get into that kind of missing 411 type stuff there. But yeah, I never made that connection before in my own head, but that could be one to look at, Rob.
Yeah, for sure.
I think and I forget, I'm going to blank on the name of the forest. It's somewhere in Where the Footprints End. I talk about, there's a woman who took a photo of something which looked like maybe a white Bigfoot. It could have also been a pine tree covered in snow in some Irish forest. I forget which one it was.
An Irish forest.
No, Ireland is, it was once 97% covered in forest and now has less than 10% forest coverage, which is why the kind of Bigfoot theories for me, it's like, well, Bigfoot could have been killed by some angry Celt. Maybe he was killed by an angry Viking. And if he wasn't killed by them, he definitely lost his house along the way. Yeah. So, like, if we're talking about the hairy man, hominid type of Bigfoot, then absolutely. Now, if we're talking about supernatural Bigfoot, I mean, it's it could be anything really.
Yeah. Well, that's where I live in Pennsylvania. There's no breeding population of ape men here. There's not.
No,
there's not. Yeah. It just can't be. And I get calls from witnesses all the time. And I talk to them, and I believe them. They're extremely believable, So as time goes on, I'm less and less amenable to the breeding population theory anywhere. But if you want to make an argument in the Pacific Northwest, okay, maybe
I think so too.
That door is closing for me as time goes on, but I'll allow maybe. But here, no, couldn't be. So
it
has to be. But I think anywhere, Ireland, UK, anywhere over there, that Scotland, that has these sightings, it's like, don't like. And some of the groups over there insist, they're these flesh and blood kind of groups. I'm like, how do you make that work? Like, how do you, in your head, how do you make that work?
To be honest, in Ireland, like, you can barely get a pint of milk somewhere without meeting someone. Like, seriously, it's so easy to come across someone. We would have to have seen. Like, there would have to be loads of reports if there was and maybe there is, but I would be quite skeptical about that.
Yeah, if you subscribe to the theory that, Bigfoot is an expert hider and maybe part of his evolutionary sort of traits or whatever is that he can hide really well and he stays out of the way of people and is a very much a reclusive species, then maybe, I mean, we have badgers here, and the only time you see badgers is at the side of a road dead.
That's
true,
so
I mean, there is that, but like, it would be a stretch. But again, we're open to it, I suppose.
Well, I guess, look, you can always herald back to that Mitch Hedberg joke, which is maybe Bigfoot's just blurry.
Yeah. Mitch Hedberg is a saint in this house.
He's one of the funniest comedians I've ever seen.
My son hilarious. My wife tolerates him. My daughter hates him, but my son and I can listen to Mitch Hedberg just constantly, and it drives my daughter insane. But
and because there's such a sort of finite amount of Mitch Hedberg, it's like you can listen to the same joke. Like, every time he tells that one, or every time I hear it rather, when he says like, I'll take a frozen banana because I might want a regular banana later. Like, they're so stupidly brilliant.
Oh yeah, he's just amazing. Like, that's I can just listen to it again. We have a Mitch Hedberg CD, and every time we're driving somewhere as a family, and it's my son's turn to pick the CD, and he picks that, my daughter just
yeah, man. I was even as a kid, I loved music, don't get me wrong, but I loved listening to people talk. Like, I just loved stand-up comedy, and I think the first time I ever heard it was like there was a Neil Tobin cassette tape we had, which is a really uber Irish reference. But it was just him telling really bad jokes. Like, one of them was about his wife complaining of heartburn. And he was like, well, if you take your chest out of the soup, you'll feel better. So they weren't even that funny, like, you know, but as a kid, I was like, I can't believe someone just like, he just says funny things. And and Mitch Hedberg, when I first heard him, I was just like, this is so good. So good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've considered even buying the merch. I think there's an official Mitch Hedberg shop with t-shirts and stuff just to annoy my daughter a little more. Well, what are the chances of getting a song about a party dog?
Oh, okay. Party
pitch.
dog song. Right, you've caught me very unaware here. Okay. It's Christmas Day, what am I doing today? There's a couple of cool guys walking away. Think I know where they live. One of them's got a head like a sieve. I run in front of them, scratch at the door. Rob comes up and he says, hey, Boar. Boar is my name. That's what he calls me. Let's go inside. My thaws are burning. Turn on the TV. Listen to Mitch Hedberg. But at the end of the day, he'll put me outside because he needs to get up for work.
Beautiful song. I'm getting emotional on him.
I hope you did call him Boar. I ran out of road there for a second.
Much more improvised songs on Monster Fuzz.
Yeah, lots of them. Literally one every episode.
Amazing. Guys, I love the podcast. I do. I love Monster Fuzz. So
We're a big Strange Familiars fan, honestly, right?
Huge.
So when we started the podcast, Eamon name dropped you a few times. He was a big fan, and I listened after on his recommendation. But we've had guests on the podcast, and we've guested on the podcast, but on different podcasts. But Eamon was literally fangirling about meeting you and having you on our podcast. So.
I got before, because I was like, even today, man, it was like we got the invite and it was like Tim Renner has invited us. Like, I can't believe, like, I was listening because I heard you on Sasquatch Chronicles, and that's where I got into the like paranormal Bigfoot, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this I suppose here we are anyway. But it was a funny moment for me. But yeah, I'm a big fan. Pass it on to Rob, and he's a big fan too now.
Yeah, so that's Strange Familiars actually has a hand in Monster Fuzz even existing. So it's a direct result of your input, I suppose, in the podcasts.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So thank you, man. Yeah, it's like fantastic work you're putting out there.
Awesome. MonsterFuzzPodcast.com.
Yep, that's the one.
And then on all the different podcatchers, I suppose.
Yeah, all of them.
Awesome. Very good. We will check it out, and we might swing back and catch some of these sleep paralysis or hypnagogia stories.
Absolutely, and you're definitely coming over for an Al Batwitch episode. That's in the pipeline. That's happening.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks
so much. Take care.
So, if you had an unruly black party dog that visited your house on Christmas and New Year's.
That is different from my black dog experiences.
Yes, very different.
There was no party happening, or I wasn't invited.
I love their story of the party dog. And of course, it sounded like a very well-behaved dog. Perhaps it had already gone through the program at 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy.
That is the only thing that really makes sense.
Yes. And he was a perfect house guest because of it.
Reformed shook.
No matter whether your dog's black, brown, white, or anywhere in between.
Blue.
If it's a blue tick, yeah, absolutely. Whatever kind of dog you have, you can get help with training from 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy. You want your dog, no matter the color of its fur, to grow up to be a pleasant party dog and a good guest when it goes to strangers' houses on Christmas and New Year's. So you want 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy. They have a relationship-based approach, which helps you and your puppy become perfect for each other. They have online sources, video lessons, a secret Facebook group, and of course, one-on-one options are available. You can find them at sithappens.us. Let 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy help you understand how your dog thinks and apply proactive training methods so you and your puppy can become perfect for each other. I did post the dog reading video last week, by the way. It's in the show notes for last episode.
If they can teach dogs to read, imagine what they can do in shoe chewing technology.
Right, exactly. Once again, go to sithappens.us. Look for the 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy link at the top of the page. 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy can teach you what to do, and perhaps more importantly,
what not to do.
Again, that's sithappens.us. Look for the 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy link at the top of the page.
One day I think we should do a patron episode of just our attempts at doing different commercials.
All the outtakes?
Just all the outtakes.
That would be hilarious. Immediately after I was done talking with Rob and Eamon, you brought the mail in that day, and this book was in it.
Oh, I don't like that cover. It's just that I don't like black dogs with red eyes.
I know, but what are the chances that I didn't buy this book? The author sent it to me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so this book shows up, Phantom Black Dogs, Walkers of the Liminal Way. Literally, I hang up from talking with Rob and Eamon. He hand me the mail. I open it up.
So it arrived while he was telling the story, basically.
Essentially, yeah. So we've been talking about black dogs, and then this book comes. We will be having the author of this book on the show, by the way, W.T. Watson. We'll be talking to him, I think, in October. If it's not October, it's early November. In any case, we'll be talking to him coming up. Been reading the book so far. Pretty good. I'm enjoying it. Want to thank W.T. Watson for sending the book my way. Our curiosity of the week ties in with the patron episode we released earlier this week. I think I put it out on Monday, which was on postmortem photography. This is a postmortem, not the kind we really talked about. Not a pretty postmortem of someone lying peacefully in the coffin. But we also talked about World War I on the patron show. So this kind of fits in with that too. This is a stereo view, human wreckage in no man's land. And it's a photo of human remains in France in World War I. It is a British soldier. I'm not that good at identifying people by their guns or the helmet. It says on the back.
Oh, okay.
It is a British soldier in no man's land.
Wow, I don't even remember that we ever got this. Wow, that's affecting. Let's say that.
Yeah, it's a powerful image.
Maybe a small content warning there.
Yeah, content warning. If you don't like seeing human remains, you might not want to.
It's not the most gruesome thing. It's
No, it's mostly skeletons.
You know how, and this doesn't really apply to people per se, but like when you find things out in the woods, to me, I immediately put them into two categories, either dry or wet.
Like, yeah, bones. Yeah.
Bones and such.
Yeah.
This is a dry photo, so don't worry about that aspect of it.
And interestingly, you're the scaredy cat as far as all things paranormal. You're the one who
just all things.
Doesn't want to look at even the cover of the Black Dog book.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly lovely. I just don't particularly like that imagery.
Exactly. And yet, when it comes to wet or dry specimens, I cannot deal with gore or gunk stuck to bones. It's got to be nice and clean.
Like yours needs to be dead and perfectly
sun bleached
for like 20 years before you pick it up.
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps, but you have no problem.
As long as it's dry.
Oh, okay.
If it's dried on,
you don't mind pulling gunk off as long as it's dry gunk.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's
okay. Yeah,
like I can't do paper mache because there's like a wet quality I don't like about it.
See, still with me. I've seen you pull gunk off of skulls where I've just been like,
but it was dry.
And you're just like, nah, no problem. Yeah, well, anyway. So we all have our things, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, this seems to be a fairly dry specimen.
This is a dry specimen.
It's mostly skeleton. It's not gory. But it is powerful. It is.
Yeah, I would say it was, I'm not trying to make light of that, but
yeah,
I feel like whenever there's something uncomfortable, I immediately have to go into humor mode to try to deal with it. So
this stereo view, obviously it's after World War I or during. On the back it says it was taken a year after the soldier was killed. There still remains there in no man's land. Brutal.
It almost looks a little posed, doesn't it?
I don't know. It could be.
It's hard to say.
It could be, yeah. In any case, it's a stereo view image from, I'm guessing, anywhere from 1915 to 1920, sometime in there. If you go to the show notes under this episode at strangefamiliars.com, you can click on this. It'll take you to our Etsy shop where you can purchase this and other curiosities of the week. We had multiple packs of those pain pills. What is it called? What are they called? Pain tablets? What do they call it?
I don't know. Rolls of old drugs.
Whatever you call them. We had multiple packs of those. So we still have some of those. We sold, I don't know, a few of them from that. But if you want those, we still have a few of those left. And a few of the other curiosities of the week.
Yeah, and we found out, we did a little research, they're actually way older than we thought, too. So
yeah.
They're actually 1800s instead of the 1900s.
I mean, the absolute oldest they could be, he died in, 1913? So
yeah, but didn't they say they stopped making them in the late 1890s or something like that?
Did you find that? I forget. I don't know. The absolute oldest they could be is like really early 1900s, but they're probably from the 1800s. So we still have some of those left. While you're at our Etsy shop, you can get copies of all of my books, both my nonfiction paranormal explorations and my art books.
Isn't that basically a nonfiction paranormal exploration as well?
My art books?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
You can get Strange Familiars t-shirts. You can get Strange Familiars stickers. I think we have Strange Familiars patches up there as well. You can get
prints.
You can get prints of my artwork. All kinds of cool stuff in our Etsy shop. Our shop name is Lost Grave. That's one word on Etsy. But if you type in Strange Familiars, our stuff should come up. While you're on Etsy, make sure to check out our friends at Karmic Garden and check out Chad's shop, Ruck Rabbit Outdoors.
Will we be in beautiful Columbia, Pennsylvania?
Yes, we will. On October...
I think it's the 9th.
October 9th.
It's the Saturday.
Saturday, yeah. Albatwitch Day, which, ironically, I'll be going back on Monster Fuzz sometime soon to talk about the Albatwitch. But we have Albatwitch Day. I'm not leading ghost tours this year. I just wanted to hang out.
From a safe distance.
From a safe distance, exactly. Yeah. I will be social distancing and maybe even masking. We'll see. We'll see how paranoid I am. But I should be there, and I'll have books and t-shirts and art prints and you name it. You should be able to find us pretty easily. It's by the river in Columbia. We might have our big black pop-up tent, probably have a Bigfoot banner if we have that, or I might be under the awning. We're not sure. But come on out and see us October.
There'll be signage, though, right? Proper signage.
There will be proper signage. Come out and see us in Columbia, Pennsylvania on October 9th. Somebody wrote Allison and said, you are right about the Route 30 bridge. They said they don't have a problem with any of the other bridges, including the Norman Wood Bridge, which, come on now. That's ridiculous. But they will get off of Route 30 and go on the 462 bridge every time, they said.
There we go.
So, once again, listeners coming in on your side of the argument, riddle me this. You get stuff from our Etsy shop. If you pick us stuff from us at Albatwitch Day, it helps the podcast a lot. Another way to help the podcast is to become a patron at Patreon, patreon.com/strangefamiliars. There's all different levels of support there. At every tier of support, you get extra content. We just dropped a patron show earlier this week. I'm already preparing the October patron shows. We are doing 2 full-length shows of Strange Familiars for our patrons every month, exclusive. Patreon.com/strangefamiliars. They have monthly and yearly subscription options, whatever's more convenient for you. But if you don't like subscriptions and you still want to help us, you can go to the show notes under any episode at strangefamiliars.com. Look for the paypal.me link, click that, and you can leave a one-time donation. Of course, everyone can help by sharing the show on social media and leaving us those nice 5-star reviews wherever you're listening. Those nice 5-star reviews helps get the show in front of new potential listeners, which helps the show as well. I think that's all the news I have this week, Allison. We will be back soon with more Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts, music, books, art, podcasts, and more. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. You can go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com if you want to hear more Stone Breath music or purchase music. Strange Familiars is on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars. We have the Strange Familiars Gathering group there as well. You can join that. We are on Instagram at Strange Familiars, one word. And we are on the web, always at www.strangefamiliars.com.
In 2019, the first Strange Realities Conference took place in Nashville, Tennessee. The pandemic and turmoil of the following year could not stop 2020's conference from thriving in cyberspace as a live streaming event. Now, for 2021, the third annual Strange Realities Conference will combine these worlds into a paranormal hybrid event, live in person in Nashville and streaming online. Join us in exploring just how truly strange our reality can be with an interdimensional lineup of speakers presenting unique and intellectual perspectives on magic, mysteries, and the paranormal.
Featuring Alan Greenfield, Dr. J. Michael Bennett, aka Dr. Future, Tim Banal, Soraya Ascaf, Dr. Stephen Finley, Aaron Gullius, Amy Pachula, Brent Rains, Chris Ernst, Heather Mosier, Michael Hughes, Jose Herrera, Joshua Cutchin, Kiki Dombrowski, Nathan Isaac, P.D. Newman, Steven Snyder, aka Recluse, David Metcalf, Timothy Renner, Steve Stockton, and Ren Collier. Tickets available at strangerealitiesconference.com.
It's gonna be amazing.
I shall gain to the hair with sorrow and sight and meikle care, and I shall gain to the devil's name, like will I come home again. I shall gain till a cat, with sorrow and sight in a black shat. And I shall gain to the devil's name, I kill I come home again. I shall gain to a crawl, with sorry and sight in a black thrall. And I shall gain to the devil's name, I kill I come home again.